Our next story will be conducted by a couple. Dr. Brandy Pierce is a lecturer in management of organizations and the faculty director of Teams at Haas at the Haas School of Business. Prior to earning a doctorate in organizational behavior, she worked in the Silicon Valley, leading alliance teams for Oracle Corporation. John Pierce leads strategy and operations for the Index and Data Solutions team as part of BlackRock's business operations. He has also worked with Charles Schwab's, Mellon Capital Management, and Diamond Consulting over his 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. Please welcome Dr. Brandy Pierce and John Pierce.
Thank you for having us. It's fun to be here in Anderson, a place that I speak often, and to share it with John.
This is my first time here.
So thank you for coming and doing this with us, because I think building on what Anne shared and Elena just shared, picking your partner is a really important part of the journey, both for you and for them. So we want to share a story, our story, in hopes that it illuminates just one way in which this might play out, and to make it feel a little real. So for me, collaboration has been a part of my life since I was a very little girl. It started when I played grocery with my sister and library with my friends. And over time, I began to become inspired by it when I watched leaders who made it feel like it flowed. And then I had a moment where I became very intrigued by it when I saw it fall apart. And I wanted to understand it better. And that led me to think about studying it. And eventually, it's really become my life's work. But I really didn't know the importance of collaboration until I began the journey of parenthood, of really balancing my own aspirations and goals for a career with my desire to have a family and be engaged and embedded in that, and to also support my life partner as he built his goals and aspirations. So for John and I, we had had a lot of practice. We've been married 30 years. We were together almost 15 years. We're kind of slow starters. This might be something you notice in our talk today. So we spent almost 15 years practicing our partnership before we had children, before we kind of tipped our toes into the pond, if you will. We spent time playing as undergrads at UC Santa Barbara, go UCs. We traveled the world. We lived in Japan and Micronesia. We traveled all over Europe. We traveled to Turkey and so many other places I want to go together. We went to graduate school together, Carnegie Mellon. We spent many nights that first semester, so I really understand the core, grinding away at statistics and theoretical economics that have nothing to do with organizational behavior, by the way. But it really didn't prepare us for what it was going to mean to really balance these two careers. We began to realize as we took this step forward into parenthood that we didn't have a model. We didn't really know what that was going to look like. And we didn't have a plan. And we began to realize over time that we were going to just have to forge ahead, and we were going to have to pioneer our own path. We were going to have to adapt. Those of you who have been in class with me, we were going to have to iterate. And we were going to have to really think about how we do this in our way, and perhaps in a new way.
So I will take it from here for a little bit and talk about the family. And there's no way to really dip your toe into parenthood. But our first daughter, one of three, Kennedy was born in Pittsburgh while we were back. I had graduated, Brandy was still pursuing her studies. And so one thing I will say is having three daughters, conferences like this are very important. And I'm often asked, well, what's it like not to have a boy? And I think it's a really strange question. But my answer to this is I have the male majority in my house. We have a dog that's a female as well. My vote doesn't count with my kids. It doesn't really matter to me, but really
I don't think that
it.
has to do with gender, though.
No. Thank you. So when we decided to take on this new career of parents, I had finished my studies. Brandy had gotten through her kind of qualifying exams, and we thought, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to, we had this plan. We'll have a child, and so Kennedy came into our lives, and it felt like we had this. At the time, I was a consultant, and that's kind of a foreshadowing of the story to come. But it seemed to work. The firm I was working for had this great policy, paternity leave, which is now more common. So I was actually at home a month before Kennedy was born. Mm-hmm. I had a month after. I was just doing projects at home. It seemed fairly simple. Brandy as a student, fairly flexible. And then came time to start working again and traveling. So leaving on a Sunday night, coming home Thursday night, best case Friday. It became challenging. And we realized we really need a plan because we don't have a plan. This is not working so well for us. And then I think we came up with a plan how to make this work, started working, and then Kennedy got ill. Very hard topic, but we had to shift again. Huge curveball. And so what I remember I'm going to go back to high school, played baseball. I don't think I was that good, but the one thing I always remember is about how to hit a curveball. Not that I could do it, but it was, you just got to hang in there because it's coming right at you, but it's going to move. And so that's what we did. And at that time, we realized we need more support. So living in Pittsburgh, no family, we decided to relocate, come back to the Bay Area. Brandy took a leave at that time to work with Kennedy, and I looked for a new job, something that didn't require travel. I'm very happy about that because travel's not all that great.
At the end of the day. So our needs changed. Our situation changed. Even though we had a plan, life has a way of sometimes unearthing you. I needed something different. I wanted to be home. I wanted to be with Kennedy. I wanted to help her heal. John agreed to step forward professionally, to step back from a role in travel, to relocate to the Bay Area so that we could be with family. And it was in this moment when the partnership really kicked in for all of us. Kennedy did her part. She healed. She became a robust little lady running around on the playground. We continued to grow our family. We had Taryn, who's in the middle. That's our second daughter. And then Mackenzie, our third. And in that moment, I loved my role at home, but I started to notice I really missed my work. I actually felt a little lost without it. And John and I spent a lot of time thinking about that. What should that look like? We had moved back to the Bay Area. It's very expensive to live here. We had a mortgage. I know, yes. We had a mortgage. We had things that we needed to do. And the question was, what were we going to do? Were we going to invest in childcare so that I could go back and be a student? And there were lots of late nights, lots of discussions. And then we began to realize, hold on. I had already spent 3 years on my doctorate. I was well on my way. I had a full ride at Carnegie Mellon. And we took out a student loan, and I started back slowly. oh so slowly. First 2 days a week while Taryn was young, and then when Mackenzie turned 1, I returned for a third day a week. And I began to get my legs back under me. And I had partners, including John, but also an incredible chair of my committee, Lori Weingart, who I will forever be indebted to. So choose the people who you work for wisely. She introduced me to Pamela Hines at Stanford University, and the two of them agreed to be the chairs of my committee, to again partner to help me move forward. It allowed me to have a lab locally. I would spend many days going down to Stanford, working with Pamela and her students. I spent lots of days here. My dad, who is now emeritus, had an office in Worcester Hall. So I would come into Worcester and work. And in many ways, it's where John really stepped up, because there was a lot of unknown in finishing this path. I didn't know where it was going to lead me. Academia is a challenging world. It's a place it's a national job market, typically. And there was a lot of uncertainty when we were taking out loans to do it. And it was hard sometimes to prioritize my work that didn't have a paycheck associated with it. And so we realized we had to be really intentional and really mindful about that. So we built a little office outside of our house, not very far, 10 feet, but it made all the world of difference. So I could sneak away from the chaos of our life. I could write, I could think in the weekends and the evenings when John was at home, and you dove in and you really took over. And we learned in that there was so much power for him and for me, that we were both getting so much out of this experience. But more importantly, it was those moments, much like Anne shared, where I had doubts, big doubts. And John would say to me, "You got this. You got this." And this is important. It's important for you. It's important for me to feel like you met your goals, but it's important for our girls to see you. And I have to tell you, yesterday, my oldest daughter is a senior. She's getting ready to go off to college. She's waiting to hear from the UCs. It's a very intense time. And she's been heavily invested in an organization called St. Baldrick's, which raises money for childhood cancer. And just yesterday, she was on KTVU2 News talking about her experience. She was so poised and so graceful. And it was in that moment that I just realized that we were preparing for this, like, you were right. So important for my girls to see me move through something challenging and get to the other side. And it's given me gifts that I didn't ever expect. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a great journey thus far. And so I lost where I was just now. That I didn't know that was coming.
That was off script.
So during this time, we're back, and as Brandy's finishing her doctorate and starting at Haas and easing in, I'm starting to ramp up back at kind of my career. And so I've been post-consulting. I've been with Charles Schwab, The Gap, and then Barclays Global Investors, all in sort of finance, FP&A. And people always ask, are you an accountant? How'd you get there? I still don't know how I ended up in FP&A. But it worked for us. It allowed us to keep moving on this trajectory. And then the firm, BGI, was acquired by BlackRock. So that was right around the downturn. I had to navigate this in the Bay Area career. What's going to happen? What are they going to do with their office in San Francisco? Because now all management is really in New York based. And so, again, kind of rethinking career and how to be strategic in this, I thought, well, I've got a few things. One, I believe I have a skill set that is a little difficult to replicate. I can reinvent myself. And notice that with everybody now shifting to the East Coast, I can go to work very early. So that's worked for me. And as we're working through this, but it's challenging being in the corporate world. All my contemporaries and peers, especially at BlackRock, and I'm sure elsewhere, it's a lot of single income families. So I'm comparing myself and my career to folks who are really focused and have kind of a little bit more leeway. And this is both male and female. There's a lot of folks I know, and I work with at BlackRock where the husband stays at home. But for Brandy and I, we both have kind of our goals and aspirations and thinking about kind of a long-term approach. And as an example of this long-term approach, and I know there are a lot of easier ways to prove this to oneself, last year I thought, you know what, I'm going to run a 100K race. Now, I had to run a 5K corporate challenge like a couple years before. And if you looked at my mileage to date, was 0. But you know what, this is going to take a plan, and I'll kind of be able to focus and prove this to myself and to my girls. Like, just put your mind to it, and you can do it. So I did. I finished that, and I look back, and probably there are a lot of easier ways, and I'll do it differently. But it was a great challenge. And I think as we wrap up here, the thing that Brandy had mentioned, and I've heard it a couple times today, is the theme of being a pioneer. No one has the same path as you do. No one ever will. And you just keep thinking about it as like, I'm forging my own path, and I can do this.
Yes.
And you can do this.
And we can do this.
Yes.
Thank you.